Now I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, who's going to lead a session for us focused on local government. If I could ask you all to please show your appreciation for UKIP's local government spokesman, Pete Reeve.
Good afternoon, conference. And hasn't it yet again been a fantastic 2 or 3 days? 1 day of training where I think we all got a huge amount, and now 2 days of really, really fascinating information and uplifting stuff, showing that this party really is taking this country into the future. Now, before I introduce some of our team that are going to speak today, and the most important thing for us in local government is that we are a UKIP team. We work together, we fight together, we stand shoulder to shoulder to make this country a better place. Right from the parish councils to the town halls, right the way through to Westminster, looking after our people and our communities is what this party does best, and we do it best in local government. So we've got some fantastic speakers today, but first I'd like to say a couple of very quick thank yous. Firstly, thank you to Steve Cllr, our party chairman, for making this event so fantastic. And secondly, I'd like to say, especially after his speech again this morning, thank you for Douglas Carswell, our man in Westminster. I know there's a lot of debate about the 4 million votes that we got and what representation we should have had in Westminster, and many say it should have been 80 plus. But actually, with an MP like Douglas, the best MP in Parliament, I think he represents 4 million people well. Now, the first person I'd like to bring up up to the podium is someone who is very dear to my heart. I've worked with her very closely over the last few years in the Local Government Association. She's now the Vice Chairman of the Local Government Association nationally. She's leader of the independent group of the LGA in which we sit. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Councillor Marianne Overton, OBE.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, conference. It's great to be here. Thank you very much indeed. That was a piece that had dropped on the way, so thank you. I want to invite you to help improve our local councils and to strongly influence the laws of this country. That is the work of the Local Government Association, and that's where we need your help. For too long, this country and our councils, to some part, have been run in a three-party state, with people cocooned in a Westminster bubble. Not anymore. It's time for local councils and local people to stand forward, to take responsibility and power and money from central government and do a better job for our residents on the ground. For that, councils will need to change. The time has come to have different ideas rooted directly in our communities, and that's where we need people like you. We need much more diversity represented by the independent group, which brings vibrant, lively ideas that work, and the determination to carry them through. Let's make sure that our councils and our government, wherever it is, has no closed minds in cosy chambers. We bring a new world where a range of ideas are genuinely respected, heard, listened to, looking at the facts and the best solutions found. For those of you not familiar with the Local Government Association, I'll just give you 2 things that we do. We have 2 big jobs. We support, promote and improve local government to help councillors and councils do the best job possible for their residents. Secondly, we work with central government to improve the laws, to make things better for our residents, because we understand from the ground just what the effect can be. As you heard, I'm leader of the independent group, vice chairman of the Local Government Association, and our deputy leader of the independent group has done a great job throughout his period of office, Peter Reeve. The independent councillors, the independent group, includes members who are not part of any of the old parties, not part of the Conservatives, the Labour or the Liberal Democrats. So ours is the only group that has grown consistently over the last 4 years and now stands as the third largest group, ahead of the Liberal Democrats. And a key part of this success, and I want to thank all of you, is very much about the work not just of all councillors, all of our members, but in particular UKIP councillors up and down the country who now make up 20% of the independent group. "26 councils are actually led by our group members, including, of course, the one that's really put UKIP on the map, and that's Thanet District Council. For local government is a tough one. Over the past Parliament that's just finished, we took a lot less than our fair share of funding. Core funding for local councils, that's part of the income tax that you put in that comes back to be devolved, spent locally, that part has reduced by a staggering 40%. And we're told to expect the same again. But this time, we will have made any easy savings, and it'll be a tough call. By 2020, we calculate a £10 billion shortfall every year. Councils have done well. They've adapted and survived so far. But are we at a tipping point? It's time for us to be much more noisy and to make sure that those powers are devolved to local control. We have kept trust with the public all that time. 80% in a local poll, 80% of people said they trust their local council. You might guess what the same question was for central government. It was 5%. I think that speaks volumes. The LGA works hard to support, promote and improve local government so that we can send a single, strong messages, and that has a big impact. We really do influence the laws that come down in our government. We fight for funding that will put councils on a sustainable footing. We provide training and we work to plug the skills gap within our communities, and we have fought and succeeded in a number of devolution deals that offer real growth opportunities for our communities. We're asking for £60 billion of central government funding to be devolved to local control, and that puts power back in your hands. We called for more services to be under one democratic roof. We got public health, which came out of NHS. So what next? Transport, planning, housing, skills, economic growth, freedom to set our own taxes, business rates, and to target that spending more effectively. So there's a lot to do. As well as playing a key role in influencing central government, the independent group is also proactive in taking forward our own initiatives and campaigns, particularly electoral reform. And I was fascinated to hear such really good debate this morning. It's a significant achievement for UKIP to achieve 3,881,099 votes. And I didn't quite count everyone myself, but everyone certainly counted. Each one sends a message. The voters have lost faith in the main parties, and politics, as usual, is just not good enough anymore. Instead, communities want candidates who really understand what's going on locally and is prepared to speak up for it and vote for it. We've set up a task and finish group, a group in the electoral in our independent group. We set it up because we're going to be looking closely at electoral reform and how best to really push this forward. So, in conclusion, the independent group in the LGA is diverse, vibrant and determined. UKIP members are doing a great job up and down the country, standing up for their local residents. They're listening, looking carefully at the facts and making sure that the best solutions they can get for their residents are the ones that come through. They're speaking up loud and clearly for their residents. We now have the power and we have the passion and the determination to improve things for our residents. It is a time of change. So let's get on with it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I do need to thank Marianne because UKIP has become a very powerful force, both in the LGA and in local government itself, because of our relationship with the independent councillors and the group that she leads. We really are changing behind the scenes government policy and having so much influence in creating better legislation. And that, combined with our party branding and what you guys are doing out there on the streets, really is a powerful force for change in this country. Part of how we see that change is some of the results that we've been getting up and down the country. And it's sad for me that we don't have time to thank each and every one of our councillors, because they work ever so hard, they work incredibly demanding hours and do a fantastic job. Many of our chaps are now the official opposition on councils up and down the country, and I can't name them all, but one in particular I'd like to thank is Councillor Cavan Vines, who, as the leader of the opposition in Rotherham, has really sought to put that council back right from the mess left behind by the Labour Party. And of course, there are two councils where UKIP are now in administration. One in coalition with the Independents under our leadership of Bobby Anwar, so thank you, Councillor. And one who everyone's heard of now, a great friend of mine, Marianne mentioned him, Chris Wells in Thanet, a UKIP-run council. And it's at moments like that where I really realise just how right we've got it. When independent councillors say, actually, UKIP is just like us. You stand up for the community. When we take control of a district council and the changes we make are really making a difference to that community on the ground. But also, I feel a huge sense of privilege when people I've respected throughout my time in politics say, actually, you've got it so right, both in terms of what you're doing in local government and in terms of your position on the referenda, and the Conservatives have got it so very, very wrong. And I'd like to introduce now one of those people who I've respected for many years and has just come back to UKIP, having been the leader of Cambridgeshire County Council. Ladies and gentlemen, please can I give you Nick Clarke.
Chairman, Conference, it is with great pleasure and some emotion that I stand before you today. As Peter mentioned, until the last elections, I was the Conservative leader of Cambridgeshire County Council and more recently the chairman of Cambridge Conservatives. Just before the general election, I announced publicly that I had left the Conservative Party and joined UKIP. I now firmly believe that only UKIP will protect our wonderful country, regain our borders and enable our citizens to thrive in a free, and sovereign nation. I have no confidence that the Conservative Party is able to deliver on an exit from the EU, nor am I convinced it even wants to. In my discussions with senior Conservatives, it is clear the referendum is but a token to hold the Conservative Party together. A party that did not expect to have to deliver on its promises. A party that will almost certainly tear itself apart on the EU issue. It is increasingly clear that only UKIP has the clarity of vision, the determination to sustain the Brit exit argument over the long term, not just for one election, but for much longer if required. But what is startling is in my lifetime, the population of our great country has been in the 40 millions. It is now 64 million people and rising. And where is this going to end? Unrestricted migration from the EU places an extraordinary demand on our public services, and I know from personal experience that's true, and demands ever more houses to be built on our green belt. We need and must demand a point system like Australia to get the very best people from around the world whilst restricting others. To get this, we need to leave the EU, and this is not about race, creed, sex or politics. It's about numbers. Our small island is filling up. We must leave the EU. But UKIP is not a one-subject party. It's not just about Europe. The political classes in London are increasingly out of touch with real people like you and I who deserve better. I have chaired Cambridgeshire's Health and Wellbeing Board, and I know that the UKIP policy of bringing the NHS under local control through health boards is absolutely the right one. As an ex-serviceman, I'm extremely troubled how the armed forces are being treated. Numbers are being reduced, yet they are asked to take on commitment after commitment after commitment. Only UKIP will commit 2% of GDP on defence in line with NATO guidelines. And in contrast, the other parties join forces to pass a law to spend 0.7% GDP on overseas aid. This cannot be right. When I joined UKIP, I expected former Conservative colleagues to turn away from me. But instead, I have had emails and calls of support from very senior Conservatives, some who are also ready to come and join us in UKIP. Some have even donated money. But we have a challenge, and our challenge is to convince Middle England, those who believe in what UKIP stands for, to take the next step and join us at the ballot box in the way 4 million people already did at the general election. And to do that, we must be convincing in our arguments. We must be credible in our statements, honest in our actions, and absolutely clear in our communications. We have to be seen as a safe pair of hands that can be entrusted with the levers of power of this amazing country of ours. People like us, from every background, from every corner of our magnificent country, from every persuasion, are coming together behind UKIP to save our country. Together we can reclaim our country and a way of life for our children and our grandchildren, and I'm proud to be doing my bit. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, isn't he brilliant? Now, Nick Clarke is a sign for me, and we're having conversations, as he's alluded to, with a huge number of people, certainly in local government, who are saying that UKIP have got it absolutely right. And over the next few months, as we build up to the referenda, they're going to be coming out, like Nick, to declare that UKIP are right and to put their political careers on the line. Now, our last speaker today is someone who did do that in the past, and he's a great bloke. He's the elected chairman of our Councillors Association. He represents UKIP councillors on the NEC for this party, and he's a really genuine bloke delivering services for local government and making a difference for you. Before I bring him up, I do just want to say one last thing to the most important people in the room, which is thank you to every one of you, because without you, none of this would be happening. We wouldn't be in councils, this party wouldn't have changed this country already. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you David Sprason.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Marianne. Good afternoon, conference. As Paul Nuttall said yesterday, UKIP councillors are a growing band. 5 years ago, we had 9 UKIP councillors in upper tier authorities. Today, we have 489. So in UKIP, we do recognise that by winning local elections and getting our council elected, it's not easy, and it's a difficult task and requires a lot of hard work. But our reward is that it gives us a great local platform for helping to get out of this undemocratic EU and to get UKIP MPs elected in 2020. We do have important elections next year, and in 2017 we have the county council elections. We need good local candidates in place who know their patches inside out. You will have many topics to go at, not just the pressures from uncontrolled immigration. Our UKIP councillors play an important role within their communities by highlighting the unfairness from the EU and this Tory government. They promote the UKIP message of hard work and commitment to the job, exposing waste, bureaucratic nonsense and crass stupidity. This is an everyday occurrence for our councillors. Council budgets, unlike our EU contribution and foreign aid, are not protected, and we are again seeing unprecedented cuts and billions of pounds disappearing from our government grants. The results of these funding cuts is the closure of libraries, museums, our waste collections, grass cutting and road maintenance being drastically reduced. In other words, all non-statutory local services are disappearing under this Tory government. It's a disgrace. Social care, a statutory service, continues to take the majority of council tax funding as central government grants reduce. The current Tory government funding gap for adult social care is growing nationally by 700 million each year. And they have backtracked on their manifesto promise to cap the cost of care. It appears that Cameron and his cronies are happy to continue with an unfair system that requires those who need care having to sell their family home to pay for it. A national disgrace and yet another broken promise. Conference, this government have no idea of the consequences their policies have on local services. The recent announcement to introduce the national minimum wage will cost councils an estimated £830 million by the end of the decade. Yet another underfunded commitment placed on our local authorities. Their failure to control immigration is adding to an already overstretched, underfunded local service, with unsustainable pressure on housing, resulting in even more houses being built on our green fields. We have unsustainable requirements being placed on our schools, medical services and children's social care. The influx of new arrivals from the Middle East is in chaos, and councils taking refugees from Syria, as it stands, will only be funded by this government for 1 year. That is what we're telling our local residents. These are just a few of the areas UKIP councillors up and down the country are highlighting, and not by opposing them, but offering real alternatives. Raising these issues and how they impact on your local area will assist UKIP councillors to get elected at local elections over the next few years. Conference, UKIP offers real choice to the electorate, not only nationally but locally. We must continue to be open and honest with them. We are the only party that will say no to cutting frontline services, as we believe investing our taxes locally, not giving them away to Brussels and in foreign aid. Conference, UKIP's growing army of grassroots councillors like you do believe in Britain. Thank you.